evening tide cold and gray. The chasms broad and far and wide, and he built a bridge to span the tide. It's a wonderful thing.
I knew you want to put that phone first.
I really would like to. I like it as a builder, because that's what I think I am, not a promoter.
When Henry Kaiser was born in 1882, the world was a quieter, gentler place. Francis and Mary Kaiser could see right away that their son was a headstrong boy who knew what he wanted. Folks in Whitesboro, New York, who got to know him better, admired his spirit. They weren't surprised when he dropped out of school to find a job and supplement the family income. Henry had an appetite for life. He knew how to have a good time. But that little photography shop in Lake Placid was just the beginning. Henry Kaiser was to become one of the great builders of all time. A man whose roads and dams and ships and automobiles would alter the course of the 20th century. The year was 1907. Henry was married now to Bessie Fossberg, daughter of the prosperous Virginia lumberman Edgar Fossberg. He and Bessie headed west to Spokane, Washington, where Henry talked himself into a job as a salesman with a hardware sand and gravel company.
There was a bunch of old silverware or stainless or something there. He got it all cleaned up and shined and got somebody to work on it and gave everybody the idea that we could only spend so much money getting into shape, and then we'd spend so much advertising, and then we'd spend so much selling, and here the stuff was sitting there and going to be a dead loss, so he turned it all into a profit. And each time he'd talk about any of those things, when you got to the sale of something and the sales of a product, he was in his element, because there's no doubt about it. He was a great salesman.
Kaiser moved up in a hurry. It wasn't long before he was directing sand and gravel operations for road builders in the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. In 1914, the year that Henry formed his first road paving company, construction methods were still crude. Crews worked with hand tools and horse or mule-drawn wagons. The most profitable job sites were remote. Conditions were tough. Henry would underbid everybody else on a job, then figure out a way to get it done without losing his shirt. He didn't make a lot of money in these early years, but he put an organization together.
Basically, he was a Westerner. He thought like a Westerner. His progressiveness enabled him to forge ahead of the packs and do things that other people were discouraged to do or from trying to do, but he never was discouraged. He just went in there, we can do it, let's go do it.
From the beginning, Henry showed a knack for improving equipment, for thinking ahead of a job. He cut the time it took to lay California Highway in half by hitching 5 scrapers to a diesel-powered tractor. Henry's first dam was at Philbrook in the High Sierra. There wasn't a mule on the site. Power shovels, mechanized dump trucks, and scrapers did the heavy work. Henry's efficiency astonished the construction world. He was swamped with offers of even bigger jobs. The Cuban Highway project was the biggest. The Kaiser organization was awarded this contract in 1927. $20 million for 200 miles of highway over 500 bridges.
Well, Henry Kaiser loved adventure, and he coppered his risks. He was a smart enough contractor to know that the big risk is man hours, and the longer a job takes, the more you're going to run out of dough. So what he did was make big bets at the outset on facilities. And what Henry used to say was, what you need is facilities and movement of materials.
Henry mobilized every experienced construction man he knew. He trained native workmen, found sources of aggregate and cement, put heavy equipment to work under the most primitive conditions.
The building of that highway knit the country together, and I think that Henry Kaiser had a sense of achievement out of that.
Cuba was the turning point. When Henry returned to the United States in 1930, he had a desk piled high with new possibilities. Hoover Dam was one of them. Winning the bid meant teaming up with W.A. Bechtel and a coalition of other contractors to form a combine called the Six Companies. Together, these men assembled a force of thousands of workers to dam the mighty Colorado River.
Henry was the point man. That is to say, he was in charge of the job on the line in the canyon. That was where he had his first taste of laying really big money on facilities. They built what was the world's biggest concrete mixing plant ever made in order to do the pouring. And they poured enough concrete in a year and a half to build a highway from Los Angeles to Chicago. The dam stands more than 700 feet high. The dimensions of it beggared the imagination at the time.
Hoover was completed some 28 months ahead of schedule. At the time, it was the biggest dam in the world. Much of the credit went to Henry Kaiser. After Hoover came Bonneville Dam on the Columbia River. At normal stage, the Columbia moved more water than the Colorado did at full flood. Few men were anxious to take it on, but Kaiser was willing.
When Bonneville Dam was being built, he put his son Edgar and Clay Bedford, two youngsters, in charge of the project. And his partner said, well, I know, Henry, we know you believe in the young people, but my goodness, we didn't think you were going to give this to some school children. But anyway, those two young people went in and did a beautiful job and conquered the river when it just couldn't, there wasn't any such thing as can't. You had to do it, and they did it.
Upstream from Bonneville, Grand Coulee Dam was next. Almost a mile long by the time it was finished, Grand Coulee required twice as much concrete as Hoover. With thousands of workers on the payroll, Kaiser had responsibility for housing, feeding, and providing health care for his men and their families.
As an employer negotiating with unions, he, first of all, was a non-union man in his early construction days. But once he recognized that when he was working for Uncle Sam, he had to negotiate with unions, he turned his policy 180 degrees around and went aggressively out and took on the unions. He always drove hard bargains with them, but he always leveled with them. And the union leaders all loved him. They loved to sit down and tangle with him because they knew he was on the level.
He was a very hard driver. He would work on you to get his point over, and if you were stubborn, why, he'd get mad. But if you were saying, well, I don't know, Mr. Kaiser, but I just like to think about that, why, then he'd keep working on you to convince you, trying to get you to say yes to his idea. But he'd take you right up to the brink of the edge of the cliff, but he would never take you off of that cliff until everybody was set. And if everybody was set, why, then we'd go.
In 1939, the world went to war. In response to Great Britain's desperate plea for merchant ships, the Six Companies, with Henry Kaiser as sponsor, went to work. The hardcore of the new shipbuilding force were the workers from Grand Coulee.
The Victory Fleet is the fleet in being, not on paper. The visit of the President of the United States to the Kaiser shipyards lends emphasis to the national spotlight on shipbuilding achievement. The President and Mr. Kaiser see a 10,000-ton cargo ship slide down to the sea in a perfect launching. 10,000 tons made into a ship in 10 consecutive working days. A heart-chilling fact for Tokyo and Berlin. Heart-chilling indeed for the Axis, already well informed on the incredible building rate of American shipyards.
During the years of peak war construction, Kaiser Yards alone employed more than 200,000 workers. The health care plan that had served the Grand Coulee workers was revived. Benefits were increased. Facilities were expanded.
A new world shipbuilding record is set at one of Henry J. Kaiser's California shipyards. 24 days ago, just a keel plate. And today, a 10,000-ton Liberty, with Mrs. Kaiser doing the honors. Almost. sea ships today, but sky cargo carriers are Kaiser's big dream. After much controversy, Washington turns official attention to giant cargo planes and confident Mr. Kaiser.
Mr. Kaiser was a man built, like a Galento. Do you remember Tony Galento, the heavyweight fighter? Well, he wasn't fat, but he was just big. And he was a very powerful man, and he was very, as I said, very soft-spoken, but he was a very impressive fellow. Very confident of himself and his organization.
Workers at the Richmond Yard No. 2 built the Liberty ship Robert E. Perry, complete with charts and sharpened pencils on the bridge and dishes in the mess in record-breaking time. From keel laying to launching took just over 4.5 days.
And here's the man who builds them in record time, Henry J. Kaiser, with a model to show how it's done. Built to scale, the 14-foot model is made of 81 pieces. With the real thing, great ship sections are lifted and welded together exactly like this. New and quicker ways to make ships, to bring the war to an end in less time and at less cost.
This model is a replica of the Liberty ship, which we built in 4.5 days, and we expect to build many more of them in a shorter time.
Henry was the win-the-war industrialist, and he was already building ships at a fast clip when the auto companies were still putting chromium on their bumpers in 1942. He got great play in the press as the hero who was showing American industry what kind of job they had to do, taking the war seriously. And this was, of course, of considerable embarrassment to other industrial leaders in the country. They didn't like Henry Kaiser held up to them as an example of how they ought to behave. And then Henry himself, I must say, enjoyed the feedback he got from the public. He loved the role of being something of a popular hero. He loved the role of being the Paul Bunyan of American industry in the Second World War.
If you want to build a byway, a subway, or...
Kaiser companies produced millions of tons of sand and gravel, bulk cement, lightweight magnesium metal for aircraft parts, magnesium goop for bombs, artillery shells, and steel ingot.
But if the job's impossible, he takes a little longer. He can build...
From Kaiser drawing boards came plans for an amazing flying wing cargo plane designed to combat the enemy submarine menace.
Oh, Henry Kaiser. Henry Kaiser.
On the day after the Battle of the Philippines, when the Japanese Navy had been sunk or driven from the sea, Henry Kaiser and Admiral Vickery and I, as a fly on the wall, had lunch together at the Mayflower. And when the first martinis were put on the table, Admiral Vickery raised his, and with a tear rolling from his eye, he said, "Henry Kaiser, if there's one of our fellow citizens to whom we owe this day, it is to you, sir." And then he proceeded to review the fabulous story of Henry Kaiser's contributions to the war effort. The building of the Liberty ships. Then he put another 10 feet on the keel and turned the Liberty into a Victory ship. And then he turned the Victory ship into a carrier. And no one wanted the carrier, but by golly, he got the president to make the Navy buy the carriers. And those carriers won the Battle of the Philippines.
By war's end, Kaiser-sponsored yards had filled nearly 30% of all U.S. maritime needs. Kaiser Steel at Fontana, California, the first major steel plant west of the Mississippi, supplied the raw material to build them. Kaiser had gone into the war as a builder and engineer. He came out of it with the skills to help rebuild the post-war world.
Everyone who was engaged in the war effort in a grand-scale way in American industry was worried about the post-war period and how was the country going to get back to civilian existence with the huge shot in the arm that the country was getting from wartime expenditures. Henry recognized that there was going to be huge pent-up consumer demand, and he decided he was going to try to meet just about every aspect of it. He was going to build houses, he was going to build automobiles, he was going to build consumer appliances. He was going to fill the whole range of needs.
He told her that he loved her in the moon.
What Henry wanted to do most was build cars. He loved cars. He loved driving cars. He loved thinking about them. Loved tinkering with ideas for new ones.
And he kissed her in the moonlight, and she was heard to say,
love that car.
The big ambition of Henry Kaiser and his lads going into the automobile business was to build the American Volkswagen. I guess the best way you can say it. To build a small car that could be sold for under $1,000 on the proposition that the consumer ought to have a $1 a day and throw it away car.
So we sat down with Joe Frazer, and of course Henry got all excited about going into the automobile business right now, and this is the way to get in. And the reason it was is that they had to start on it. They had some know-how in the business, and with our production ability, why, we could really make this thing roll.
Kaiser leased a huge war surplus plant at Willow Run, Michigan. It was the shipyards all over again. Steel went in one end, traveled along almost 2 miles of assembly line, and came out the other end, a car, ready to drive away.
Plus the fact that at that time, right after the war, in 1946, there hadn't been an automobile built for sale during those 4 years of the war. And so there was a tremendous shortage of automobiles. But the Henry J got developed as an absolute new product, economical product, smaller product, because cars were, at those days, were just getting larger and larger. I think it was on that basis that a great thought was given to a smaller size automobile. And it was a hit. Look at today, what's going on. Sure.
Compacts, personal cars, family sedans, dozens of popular new models designed and manufactured throughout the world by Kaiser Motors. Hundreds of thousands of cars, Henry's cars. Most people doodle with a pencil on paper. Henry doodled in his Hobby Lobby, a workshop just outside Oakland.
In Emeryville, as he got on toward visualizing the post-war world in 3 dimensions, Henry set up a lab where, when he had a brainstorm in the morning, he had to see the thing mocked up by evening. And all kinds of marvelous things got made there. Automobile bodies, whole automobiles, and one of his great inventions was a little dishwasher that he hoped could be run by hydraulic power.
And today we have in our big heart box a beautiful white Kaiser dishwasher. In 10 minutes, it'll have your dishes and silver sparkling clean and ready to put away.
If dishes were wishes, you know what we'd do. We'd wash all your wishes and dry them for you. We'd put a new Kaiser to work in your home. If dishes were wishes, we'd wash them for you.
And dry them, too.
So we built these things, and we tried them out in various markets, and we had a spotty success record with it. It was simple, all right. It worked, all right. But the problem was that if there was a variation in water pressure, why, it just wouldn't work. And so when somebody else was using a facility in the household, why, it wouldn't work. Or in certain areas of the country where their water pressure was too low, it wouldn't work at all.
When we got the dishwasher marked up and began to calculate what it would cost to manufacture it, that was when Henry Kaiser found out what it was to do business in the consumer market. He discovered, to his absolute outraged horror, that the price had to be 5 times the actual bare manufactured price of the product.
But he seemed to wake up in the morning, I think, with a new idea, and we're going to do something about automobiles or planes or housing or whatever it was. He always had a new idea, and not only one, but many. So many of his ideas didn't work out. but we had to prove them out, or unprove them, I guess we should say. But he was an idea man, the like of which I've never met.
Oh, I'm not sure I can tell the floating cement story. That you achieve floating concrete by mixing it with a very lightweight material, and it will float. But he was always investigating new materials. In fact, at one point, he wanted to make insulated wallboard by putting popcorn between the walls, because popcorn would be a good insulator.
He was, say, 40 years old at the time of Boulder Dam. He was 60 at the time of, 64 at the time of Kaiser Aluminum. And he was in full force on Kaiser Aluminum until a few years before his death. So he went into a new industry that had never been competitive worldwide at the age of 64. So I think at the age of, if he was the age of 40 now, he'd be perfectly adaptable to commercial and industrial activity today.
The Kaiser Aluminum Hour. Presented by Kaiser Aluminum, the bright star of metal.
Aluminum put Henry into every home in America. He'd broken a long-standing monopoly. This new enterprise divided and subdivided, producing and reproducing at an astounding rate. Against the advice of his executives, Henry got into the household foil business.
Because Kaiser is quilted.
I know.
Katie, the Kaiser test?
Here is a 16-pound rib roast on Kaiser foil. It holds.
Get the bright red box with the quilted pattern. Kaiser foil. How it
Takes the rap.
I know.
Is it unkind to show these scenes in winter? We hope you won't think so. At the same time, Henry was undertaking an entirely new series of ventures in Hawaii. First came the Hawaiian Village Hotel, then the fabulous residential community Hawaii Kai. He was drawn to the islands. Even in retirement, he saw possibilities for development.
When it came time to become relatively less active in these operations, it seemed a natural place for him to want to go. But when he got there, he soon became restless, doing nothing, or doing very little, except being on the phone, keeping contact with all the other organizations, which he did constantly.
One of the great strengths that he had was a great intuition of what was important. He'd sit down in the morning and say, Tim, you know, we got these things to do, so let's put them down on a piece of paper. And so he'd enumerate maybe 20 things for us to do. And 2 weeks later, I'd go back and I'd have 19 of them accomplished. And invariably, he'd ask about the 20th, which I hadn't accomplished.
And Mr. Henry Kaiser was actually involved in getting building permits and seeing that house got built right. He was retired at this point, of course. So it was very interesting to watch his return to a construction project as a construction manager. He was in that construction shack, actually literally right down in the lagoon there, running this project.
But that kept him pretty well occupied for a while, and then pretty soon he started wanting a health plan over there, so he started working on me to come over and build a hospital for him and get a plan started. He built that place himself. He was a contractor for it, and he built it in 9 months. It was a record construction. But as we were building it, every day we'd go down to that job about 3 times a day. He'd walk up to the top of that 12-story building, walk down, examine everything on every floor, talk to the workers and the supervisors. And he devoted so much energy that way, but he didn't call that exercise. Continual working on a problem, or working on a subject, or working to find a solution or something better. His questioning and his desire to find the solution or a better way to doing whatever problem was around at that particular point.
He always used the phrase when we got to rationalizing things too much and too indirectly, he'd say, Tower of Babel, Tower of Babel. And he'd bring us back home again.
Well, Mr. Kaiser had the habit of surrounding himself with people who were much younger than he was. And I think he liked to challenge them, and he also liked, I think, the different ideas. He didn't really like yes people around him. He was a very strong man, but he still wanted people to present their own ideas and present them forcefully. And I think he therefore surrounded himself with people who were imaginative, who were young, who were bold.
He was, in fact, a daddy. He had a strong, warm, paternalistic sense. And the young men that came to work for him had a sense of that he was more than an uncle. He was more of a father. And it was the affection and the genuine, quick emotional response he had to people that helped to elicit that marvelous outpouring of capacity that he got from everybody.
Henry Kaiser had the ability to make us all play above our heads, and he certainly taught me that. He brought out the best in us, things that we thought we could never accomplish. He showed that we could get it done, and really brought us on to greater things.
Mr. Kaiser was never afraid of anything, period.
Everything was honorable, everything was honest, everything was above board. It was, a deal was a deal.
He said, you know, you have to stop being a doubting Thomas. He said, you have to have faith.
And he'd sit for hours watching those big bulldozers just move the land around, telling the men what to do.
He knew that the business was in other people's hands now, and his life was really coming to an end, and so it did, and it came in a peaceful way. Just looking at him and closing your eyes, boy, there he is. He hadn't changed a bit.
Smooth sailing and good luck take you. Bon voyage, we won't forsake you. The time has come for parting. We say adieu. And smooth sailing for you.
tonight?
About a half a cup, Eddie. We're gonna get that heap of mine rolling pretty quick.
You got a good night for it.
Evening. I guess I mean morning.
Good morning.
Aye.
Coffee? Plenty. And black.
For me, 8 hours of good sleep.
Did you come far? Quite a way. Incidentally, how far are we now from...
Oh, they're at it again tonight. Playing tag and chicken.
Young fools. Tag? Chicken? What do you mean?
With cars, they play games. The young ones of the town. Like tag, that's when one hot rod is,
They're not hot rods. They're shot rods.
Oh.
A real hot rodder don't play games. He races his car only where it's safe. It's these shot rods that cause all these accidents that you read about in the paper.
Oh, yeah? Well, anyways, when one is it, another one tries to tag him, and then maybe pass it on to 3 or 4 other shot rods. And chicken is like when two cars are coming head-on together. Well, the first one to steer off, that driver's chicken. He's afraid, he's a coward. They got a lot of other games they play, too, like Ride Off, Clip Me, and B&B. That means bumper to bumper. It's a wonder any of them ever lived through it. It's a wonder I lived through it. None of us want this run anymore on account of those, what'd you call them?
Shot rods.
I got these gray hairs trying to keep my rig from smashing them into junk.
Can't the police do anything about it?
Oh, they try, sure, but the state police can't be everywhere, and the city police ain't allowed to patrol out this far. And besides, a lot of these youngsters have got parents with influence. How's the coffee, okay?
Fine.
Well, anyways, I don't suppose they mean any harm. Bunch of young bucks trying to blow off steam. Oh, blowing off steam, huh? I'd like to blow them off the highway. Drivers like that makes it tough for us guys.
Yeah. They're what we call second-rate drivers. If they weren't, they wouldn't drive like that. We have a saying in our business, the only good drivers are old drivers. If they weren't good, they wouldn't live to be old.
Oh, I don't know. A lot of kids around this town are good drivers, and they... Say, I've seen your picture in the paper recently. Yeah, sure, you're,
He's Duke Marshall, the world's greatest racing driver.
Oh.
Me, I'm Angelo Murillo, the world's greatest mechanic. Right, Duke?
Half right, Angelo. I'm sure you're the world's greatest mechanic.
I knew your face looked familiar. Duke Marshall, huh? Mm-hmm. You're going to be in the fairground races, aren't you?
That's right.
Pleased to meet you, Duke. Seen you race up in Kansas City once. Real good.
Thanks.
There's a couple of them now. Morning, Joyce. Morning, Paul. You're out kind of late tonight, aren't you?
Date night. The loneliest night in the year.
Is that you I heard whizzing by here a while ago?
Not us. Junior here turned sissy on you.
Oh.
Oh, I think those games are goofy. Besides, it's a family car. When Dad taught me how to drive, he said I should remember that the other guy...
He didn't say anything like the kids at school are going to say when they hear about it. Especially Walt and Linda.
Linda Ellsworth? Is she out on the highway tonight, too?
She's the lucky one. She's out with Walt in that real cool car of his. Me, I get old Aunt Agnes here.
Now, look here, Joyce.
I'll probably never live it down.
Maybe not, but you live. Good boy, Paul. Now, what'll it be, Coke or coffee?
Neither one. Come on, Joyce. I'm taking you home.
All right. It's as good a way as any to end a dull evening, Mr. Eaton.
Thanks, Eddie.
That was my daughter. I give her the over-the-lot key treatment.
The what?
That's what my mama used to tell me when I acted bad. Over the latchkey, then wham, wham.
Oh, I don't think that's the answer, Angelo. Not at their age.
You're right, Duke. Joyce isn't a bad girl. She's just speed happy, that's all. Usually runs around with a young fellow by the name of Walt DeBoer. You heard her mention him. He's the son of one of our big wheels around town. And his father gave him what's turned out to be one of the slickest cars around.
This boy Paul, the one she called Sissy, he seems to have some sense.
Yeah, all smart. Captain the football team, the track star, a good boy. But it's the others I worry about. The reckless ones. The ones who just don't seem to care. Oh, if they could just talk to a professional.
Like you, Mr. Marshall. You could tell them plenty.
Oh, not me. No, I'm not a teacher or a police officer. I'm just a guy who makes his living driving.
Yes, so do I. But somebody ought to do something about these kids.
I understand lots of people are trying. Many of the high schools have driving courses now.
Well, maybe they ought to have courses for their parents. You show me a boy that's a nutty driver, and I'll lay you odds his old man's a crazy driver, too.
Could be. Well, let's roll, Angelo. It seems the world's greatest mechanic has fallen asleep. Angelo, come on, wake up. That does it, Angelo. Stay with the trailer. I'll be right back. Now, you young hellion. Well, a girl.
Yeah, it seems to me, Marshal, that's the name, isn't it? You're making a big to-do over nothing. It obviously was an accident. My son Walter, and for that matter, Ellsworth's daughter Linda, are not vicious criminals, as you seem to imply.
I implied nothing of the kind.
They're just high-spirited youngsters, the same as you were, I imagine, when you were young.
My high spirit, Mr. DeVore, never led me to use a powerful automobile as a potential weapon of death. Your son admitted that he was giving Linda a lesson in cuddle, a charming little game the young people of this town seem to find amusing.
My son is an excellent driver. I taught him how to drive myself.
Yes, I sort of thought you.
What do you mean by that?
What do you want us to do, Mr. Marshal?
If you're worried about your racer, we'll pay for the damage on that.
You will, Mr. DeVore? That race car is worth $25,000. Still prepared to pay? You might have had to, plus funeral expenses for your son. And for Linda, Mr. Ellsworth. No, gentlemen, it's not good enough, this fast talk about high-spirited youngsters. And I'm not sure this crazy driving is wholly their fault. I think part of it is yours and a lot of other parents. It's your responsibility to make sure that your children drive safe, for their own good as well as to protect others. But instead of giving them the guidance they need, you shrug the whole thing off as unimportant teenage growing pains.
Now, see here, Marshal.
It isn't my business to start a crusade. But somebody's got to try to stop the sort of thing that happened here last night. And we, gentlemen, are going to make a try.
What do you mean, we?
I said we. Because if I don't get your cooperation, I'm going to bring criminal charges against both of you for contributing to the delinquency of minors.
You're right, Mr. Marshal. What do you want us to do?
Excuse me, will you, Frankie? Pardon me, Joe. Let me through, would you? Nellie, let me through. Thank you.
What started this hassle anyway, Walt? Your father called mine, and I got the very...
Don't let it worry you. Linda here just picked the wrong car to cut off, that's all.
Well, you told me to do it, Walt DeVore.
And my father told me that if I didn't go to this meeting or whatever it is, he'd never let me drive the car again.
Listen, Walt, you better explain why all of us are on the beef list.
Let me fill it up. Relax, don't race it. It's all very simple. Linda and I were out on 32 the other night like a lot of you were. I was teaching her how to drive. We rode off a car. Just happened to be Duke Marshall, the big shot race driver.
How did he catch you?
Wrote it down.
Rode you down?
Don't forget, Duke Marshall is a professional.
So the large wheel through is right around.
Anyway, it made a lot of noise. So our folks have been notified, and we're supposed to go to the fairgrounds this afternoon and get a nice, big, fat lecture from Preacher Marshall.
Are you going, Walt?
Why not? It'll give us a chance to get a real close look at that race car of his. It's a Hollingsworth special, a real sprint job.
If Walt goes, I will.
Hey, that's right.
Yes, sir, they don't come any better than Duke Marshall. And there's the sweetest car on the track. Now, that's where I come in.
But what are they racing today for?
They ain't racing. They just tune up the day before the race.
Hey, where's that guy Marshall? I can't wait around here all day. I hope you make this brief, Marshal. I've got to get back to my office.
And I hope you take just as much time as you need, Mr. Marshall.
What I have to say won't take very long. And I especially want you to listen.
All right, come on, let's get on with it.
Hi, kids.
Hi.
Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I had to stop in town to pick up this. Well, how do you like it?
Gee, it's a real beauty.
You're probably expecting a lecture from me, so you're going to be disappointed. I'm not a lecturer. I'm a professional racer, a guy who makes his living driving cars. So, maybe I know a few things about wheeling the car that you'd like to hear about.
Our teacher must have studied psychology.
Let's face it, almost anybody can drive a car. And it doesn't take any intelligence to drive a car fast, just fast. Fact is, you could probably train a chimpanzee to sit in this racer and hold the accelerator down to the floorboard.
That's the reason you're so good, Duke?
No, because you see, the chimpanzee wouldn't get halfway around that track before he cracked up. He wouldn't have the know-how, the respect for rules and regulations you've got to have in order to be a good driver. Let me ask you a question. Why do you try to get good grades in school?
So we can pass.
Well, that's one reason. But in order to pass, you've got to do certain things. Follow certain rules and regulations. If you stick to the rules and do your level best, you get a diploma. Same thing applies to driving a car. If you follow the rules, you get to be a first-rate driver. A good driver. If you don't, you're just a show-off. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're 17 or 47. These show-offs, these second-rate drivers, are the bullies who cut in and out, crowd other motorists, and hog the road. In fact, you can figure any reckless, heedless, speeding show-off of a driver as a second-rate punk. Out there, we don't have much trouble weeding out the punks. They do it for themselves. If they don't abide by the rules, they get disqualified. Sometimes they disqualify themselves from living. Did any of you ever pull a person out of a real bad auto wreck and see the splinters of bone sticking through the flesh of the legs and arms? Listen to the shrieks of pain that come from a face that's been smashed to a pulp? And hear that mutilated face beg for death because the pain was so horrible? Well, I have. And it's not pretty. Not to anybody. Especially not to the person who's been cut to ribbons or crippled for life. Come on over here a minute. I want to show you something. The people who make modern automobiles have done everything possible to protect us in case of accident. Even going so far as to provide a pop-out windshield. Your head will never go through that. In a bad accident, it's designed to pop out in one piece.
Say, that really is something.
What a beautiful padded instrument panel.
It's not only beautiful, it's safe. That safety cushion and the recessed instruments are built to protect front seat passengers.
Hey, Duke, the brake's on the wrong side.
On the right side. For the right hand. In that position, the fellow sitting beside you can grab it, too.
Hey, I wonder why the front seat is slanted so much.
Yeah, it is tilted back, isn't it?
Oh, I get it. In case of an accident, there's less chance of you being thrown forward.
Sure, you remember what we learned about inertia in physics?
That's right, just like an airplane seat.
Now, this car also...
All right, Marshal. But what's all this leading up to?
The point is, Mr. DeVore, that even with the world's safest front seat, it's the nut that holds the steering wheel causes accidents.
Nice going,
That's
Duke.
right, I never thought of that. I only have a couple of nuts I know.
I don't think there's anybody here who would ever willfully want to cause an accident or endanger anybody's life. And I suppose I could ask you all to say that you try to drive more carefully because, well, because you want to be a top-notcher in driving instead of a show-off, a punk. But I've got a better deal.
Here comes the gimmick.
Gimmick, Walt? Maybe. But it might mean the difference between your being alive 6 months from now or buried under 6 feet of heavy dirt. Now, I have here some good driver agreements that are part of a safety campaign. I'll have Angelo pass them around among you so you can see them. You'll notice that there are 2 kinds. A man-to-man agreement for you young fellows and your dads, and a dad-to-daughter agreement for you young ladies and your father.
You mean we have to sign one of these?
No, you don't have to. But signing it proves that you're mature enough to make a decision. The decision that your life is worth more than a couple of thrills.
Is this pledge idea something new?
I should say not. Thousands of young drivers have signed. And each signer gets a card certifying that he's a member of this group of good drivers.
That's a pretty good idea.
Sounds good to me, too. Fine.
I've never heard of anyone breaking this pact, but of course your pledge is only as good as your word of honor. Well, what about it?
This is okay, Duke.
Sounds good to me. I'm for it.
Come on. Yeah, I'm glad you like it. Here's the line you sign on right there. And you know where?
All right, Walt. Go and sign the fool thing and let's get it over with. All the nonsensical things I ever... Well, it's his, honey. Look, Walt's a good driver now. He doesn't need anything like that.
Paul, are you going to take one home?
Sure am. How about you?
I don't have to. My dad's right here. Let me have your pen for me.
Honey, I'm proud of you.
Oh, I feel pretty good about it, too.
Hey, Mr. Marshall, is there any place in town I can get some more of these agreements?
Sure. The name and address of the automobile dealer where I got them is on the back of the agreement.
Now, let me see. I give my word of honor.
Now we can start having some fun again, Joyce. That big noise Duke Marshall's left. Ever since that business of signing agreements, everybody in town's turned chicken. All that word of honor stuff.
He was awfully nice in a way. And he did win the big race.
Yeah, by speeding like he told us not to. Big deal.
Oh, well, everybody will forget all about it now.
Sister, I already have. Even my father said the whole thing, agreements and everything, was a lot of malarkey. Just to show you what I think of this thing. Now let's really travel.
We trimmed them that time, didn't we, Joe? How about something to eat, Mama?
It won't take a second. The coffee's all ready.
Good.
I'll be right back.
You gals play a nice summer game, you know.
A truck. Why is there always a truck on these hills?
Can't you hurry a little bit, John? It's after 10 and the children should have been in bed long ago.
She'll do better after we get over the hill. We'll be home soon.
That road hog of a truck. It'll take him hours to climb this hill. I'm going around.
Whoa, be careful.
Well, it won't say where he was going tonight. You know he left so early. All of a sudden, the strangest feeling came over me. Walt, I wonder if Walt is all right. It's just that I worry so about him with that fast car.
But remember, your pledge is only as good as your word of honor.
Let's start right here. They just finished the demonstration. You know Joe Andrews and his wife Grace and salesman Johnny Wyrocki. Here's what happened that day right after the ride.
Mr. Hardigan, I'm Joe Andrews. How do you do? My wife's brother bought a few cars from you boys in the past few years and spoke well of it. Claims it's the best service in town. Well, we try anyway, Mr. Andrews. That salesman of yours is something. I'm a salesman too, you know. He called me about a week ago and asked me to take a look at the new Henry J. I told him the Chevy was holding up fine.
You see, Joe Andrews recognized a good job of selling when he saw one. He knew there was no magic in it, but there were a few simple steps that Johnny followed. First, that phone call he made to Joe Andrews at his office.
Yeah? This is Joe Andrews.
Hello, Mr. Andrews. This is Johnny Wyrocki of Robotica Kaiser Frazer Sales and Service. I hope I'm not disturbing you, Mr. Andrews, and if I am, I'd rather call some other time.
I am kind of busy, but go ahead.
Fine. If you're free for 1 minute, I'd like to offer you an invitation to ride in the new Henry J. Corsair. Our new models have just come in. You've probably seen one of our ads.
Well, yes, but I'm satisfied with my old bus. Just had it fixed up, and I think I'll hang on to it for a while.
Yes, Mr. Andrews, I know you're driving a Chevrolet, and we're not here to knock another fellow's product. I do know, though, that you've seen plenty of Henry J's on the road, and I'll bet you've said to yourself many times, I wonder what it's like to drive one.
Well, yes, I've wondered how they'd compare, but,
I'd like to give you a chance one any time you say the word. Better still, Mr. Andrews, if you have a few minutes free, I'll drive right over now.
No, I'm busy now.
Would you be able to spare me a half hour later today?
Yeah, 1 o'clock will be okay.
Fine, Mr. Andrews. 1 o'clock at your office.
No magic in that, was there? But Johnny doesn't get a prospect to accept a demonstration every time, or even every third time. But he makes a lot of calls, and his percentage runs 2 demonstrations for every 10 calls. It really pays off. Why did he happen to call Joe Andrews? Because the registration files, where Johnny gets many of his leads, showed that Mr. Andrews owned a 1948 Chevrolet. Johnny knows that the only way for him to sell a lot of cars is to contact a lot of people, and the quickest way to do it is by telephone. That phone call, however, is only the first step. Now, let's follow the demonstration ride itself. Johnny checked over the demonstrator himself before he left the shop. He wants that car in perfect shape every time. This Andrews was a busy man, all right, but he's Johnny's guest for the next 30 minutes. Andrews has already commented about the unusually fine road visibility of the Henry J's. Let's take up Johnny.
I'm glad you noticed that, Mr. Andrews. That's one of the features we're proudest of. We've achieved all this road visibility through careful engineering. There are some other new things you'll be interested in. Things like these new type instruments. This oil gauge, for instance, substitutes a warning light for the usual oil pressure indicator. You might not notice a needle indicating low oil pressure, but you can't miss the warning when this red light flashes on.
Well, now that makes sense.
Here's another new type instrument. Replaces the old-style ammeter. A red light signals any generator failure. And here's the knob that really saves you money. That's the overdrive control. The Henry J is delivered with or without overdrive. But you'll be driving soon, and then you'll have a good chance to see what overdrive gives in smooth performance at high speed. It's a great gas saver. Cuts engine wear, too. Maybe so.
Also, notice how the parking brake is right below the ignition switch. Just takes one easy motion to get moving. Big safety factor, too. Most of us are right-handed, so the brake is better placed for all-around use, and it's within easy reach of the passenger in case of emergency. Let's get on the road and see what this Henry J. will do.
We haven't even come to the start of the planned demonstration route yet, but Johnny always figures this is one of the most important parts of the demonstration ride. Why? Because he wants to do two things. First, he wants Mr. Andrews to like him and realize that Johnny is interested in him personally. Second, this sale is originating without a showroom contact, so Johnny wants the prospect to talk about his own personal car needs. Once he finds this out, Johnny can personalize his demonstration.
What kind of work do you do, Mr. Andrews?
I'm a salesman for the Inland Steel Company. I work out of the office where you just picked me up.
Do you drive quite a lot?
Yes, I do get around. Have to look in on all the jobs we supply steel for.
Johnny listens carefully for some remark which indicates a major interest. Even this early in the demonstration, Johnny is looking for some point of interest that will most likely sell the Henry J. to this prospect. They'll soon be turning off to the starting place of Johnny's planned course. He always uses the same route and knows every curve and chuck hole in it.
Let's turn down this road because it really gives the Henry J. a chance to show what it can do.
Well, you're not making it easy for yourself. This is rougher road than I ever used.
You notice there's no discomfort, even when we hit these deep chuck holes? A lot of engineering extras went into making this a smooth ride. We have airplane-type shock absorbers, which help stop undesirable bouncing action. I know it's hard to believe, but there's 10 feet of spring steel in each front spring. These are some of the reasons we're getting such a smooth ride.
Well, it certainly hugs the road all right, but isn't there danger of scraping bottom on rough roads?
No danger at all. The Henry J. has better than average road clearance. 7.5 inches, in fact. It'll clear even the worst chuck hole. It's a long car, but it's less than 5 feet high. It's actually wider than it is high.
I'm really surprised. I figured you'd have to give up a lot of things in a car as light as this.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the Henry J.'s light. Actually, excess weight just costs you money. Our engineers have been able to peel off the dead weight because they found a new and better way to give you that road-hugging ride you want. You see, we've got the lowest center of gravity of any car on the road. This means added comfort and safety for you and your family. You'll notice as I swing around this curve, there's no tendency for the car to pull to the outside.
Yes, it rides very well. But I've been used to a car with more horsepower. I like a little reserve power on hills.
Well, Mr. Andrews, I'm taking you to the biggest hill around here. You can see for yourself. A lot of cars would be shifting into second right now. We're picking up speed even on this steep climb. It isn't total horsepower. It's horsepower per pound of weight that really counts. The high compression head gives this engine a 7-to-1 ratio and makes the Henry J. perform like a young wildcat.
Seems to have power, but what about pickup?
Wait till you get hold of this wheel. This car has faster pickup than any other car on the road. I want you to be sure to try it. I don't care what kind of car is sitting next to you. You'll leave it behind.
Nice country out this way, isn't it?
Sure is. Say, why don't you take over now and drive right back the way we've come so you can see for yourself how well the car handles. Notice the attractive parallel grille with the built-in parking lights?
Good looking, all right.
You bet it is. Mr. Andrews, have you noticed these new taillights? They add to the smart appearance of the rear fender. They're a real safety feature, too. You can see these lights from the side as well as from the rear.
Say, I thought the luggage compartment on a Henry J. was always reached from the inside.
You can can order your Henry J with or without a deck weight, and with or without a folding rear seat. There are advantages either way, depending on your personal needs. No matter which way you select, you still get a whale of a lot of cargo carrying space.
Yeah, there's a lot of room in it for a little car.
I suppose some people do think that the Henry J is a little car, but just look here. When this rear seat is folded down into deck position, there's a regular playroom back here. A lot of people use this space to let their children play or rest during a long trip. Or it will hold a number of full-size pieces of luggage. 55 cubic feet of cargo carrying space. More than any other car on the road.
Golly, that is a lot of room.
I want you to see how much room there is in this front seat, too. 58 inches of seating width. Plenty of space for 3 full-size adults to ride comfortably across the continent. And that's exactly what plenty of smart tourists are doing. Plenty of shoulder and arm room to go with it, too. And you've already seen how much leg room there is. And you didn't bump your hat when you got in, either. That door is almost 4 feet wide. And there's plenty of headroom, too. Seems to me it adds up this way. The Henry J is a full-size car in performance. And an actual living room size and comfort, too. Even including this roomy glove compartment. One of the biggest triumphs of Kaiser engineering is the embodiment of all these big car features in a car designed to give you the advantages of easy parking, easy handling, and outstanding economy.
All right. I'm convinced.
Let's just move this seat back a little more, Mr. Andrews. This lever does the trick. How's that?
Feels fine.
Plenty more room if you need it. This seat adjusts a full 7 inches. There's a lot of stretch-out leg room, even for a man as tall as you.
While Mr. Andrews adjusts the seat, let's just check up on what Johnny's done since he phoned Mr. Andrews. First of all, he made sure the car was in perfect condition before he drove over to pick up the prospect. He made the prospect feel like a guest. He continually looked for a closing lead. He knew his demonstration course thoroughly. He let the car sell itself through self-demonstration. He even turned the question of the size of the car into a plus factor by pointing out the living room. But let's see how Mr. Andrews likes driving the Henry J.
I see you started the car like an owner. You don't have to learn a lot of new tricks to drive a Henry J.
Say, that handbrake is convenient.
Just drive it your way, Mr. Andrews. Take it to whatever you want. I'll just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Now's a good time to try the pickup for myself. Really takes off. The car's fine, all right. I'll grant you that. There's one thing you'll have to admit, though. And I've been thinking about it ever since I got into this car. Really now. Aren't those mileage claims you people make in your ads a little wild?
No, sir. If it's economy you want, Mr. Andrews, this is the right car. Now, we've come over 10 miles since we turned off the main road. And look, we've traveled all of those tough miles on less than a thin dime's worth of gas. About a penny a mile. Why, it would cost you only $9 to drive from New York to Chicago.
Well, I get good mileage. About 18 miles per gallon, I'd say.
Well, it isn't bad, but it isn't a penny a mile either. Our local owners are the best people to tell you about Henry J. mileage. Doc Lawrence lives right in your neighborhood, doesn't he?
Sure, next street over.
I want to show you a card he sent me last summer when he went to Yellowstone Park on vacation. It's at the office. We'll stop there and I'll show it to you. Doc would be glad to talk to you, too, I know that. Say, are we pretty close to where you live right now?
Yeah, right down the street.
Why don't we just stop by and pick up your wife? You might like to ride on downtown to the showroom with you.
Oh, Joe, isn't this upholstery lovely? And so smart looking, too. And they say you can clean it with soap and water.
You would notice that first. But wait till you feel how this car rides.
Nice job, Mr. Andrews. But the brakes should get part of the credit. The size of the brakes are engineered by the weight of the car. When you these brakes, you really stop. The space is there.
It's a good thing.
There's Alpha Motors now. By the way, our service department has a good reputation all over town. Pull up in front, Mr. Andrews. Go into the office, and I'll show you that card from Doc Lawrence. While we're in there, we'll just figure out how much cash you save in a year's time with your Henry J. Won't take a minute. While we're here, you'll probably want to look at these cars in the showroom, too. Then I'd suggest, Mr. Andrews, since I've still got 5 minutes left of my half hour I asked for, that we sit down and I know I'll be able to figure a good deal for you.
Now for one final check on what Johnny did after Mr. Andrews started driving the car. He found out that the point of major interest with Mr. Andrews was primarily economy, and then bore down hard on the money-saving features of the Henry J. He used a local owner testimonial to assist in getting the Andrews out of the car and into the closing room. He asked for a chance to figure a deal. How did the ride turn out? Just listen to Joe Andrews after they got into the closing room.
Johnny and that car teamed up on us, and I guess we're driving home.
That's the way it happened. There's no magic to it. Johnny just had a simple plan and followed it the way it came naturally. Will it work? Well, you bet. It's working right now for KF salesmen across the country, and they're averaging 1 sale out of every 7 demonstrations. You can do it, too.
Frazer. They call me Henry J. I was built at Willow Run, and I was made to stay. I'm just a vagabond at heart. I love the open road. With money that I've saved on gas, my wallet has overflowed.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Mr.
Frazer, how are you?
Well, Royce, good to see you here.
Here, boy. I'd like to have you meet my friend Ken.
Hello, Ken.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
How are you?
Good.
Listen, our little girl represented the Nash Vagabond, but, or rather the Henry J. Vagabond.
Ken. Okay.
You know. You'll excuse me, won't you?
I will, Ken.
No, the Henry J. Vagabond, but you'd rather talk about this car. What do you call this car?
The Kaiser Manhattan, Ken.
The Kaiser Manhattan.
Right.
Why do you call it the Manhattan?
All the world knows the city of Manhattan has everything. The Kaiser Manhattan.
Oh, that's great.
But Ken,
What?
I'm proud of the Kaiser Manhattan and the Henry J. But I don't want to talk about that. Royce, I'd like to thank you. On behalf of Kaiser Frazer and all their people, you and the Autolite family for a great show this evening. We're glad to be here.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I wouldn't know how to say thanks.
Well, that's one. I know his dad, and he's got a real nice dad, has he, too? Thank you very much, Mr. Kaiser, and we'll get right on. There.
Now, Mr. Edgar Kaiser, president of Kaiser Frazer, is ready to show off a dragon.
Stepping out with my baby.
It's the fabulous hardtop Kaiser Dragon, a superb example of fine craftsmanship to top all luxury cars. Of course, it has all of Kaiser's many exclusive new safety features, such as the fully padded instrument panel and the huge safety-mounted windshield that's designed to push out in one piece under severe impact. But that's only part of the Dragon story, because this magnificent car was specially designed and handcrafted to compete with Europe's finest at the international auto shows this summer in Europe. And Kaiser Frazer certainly knows how to win prizes. After all, the Kaiser has already won more styling and beauty awards than any other American car today. Yes, from the sensational new bamboo vinyl padded top to the ultra-luxurious interior upholstery of rich Laguna fabric, this new Kaiser Dragon is built for those who demand the finest. And as a crowning touch, there's a gold-plated plaque on the instrument panel on which the proud owner's name will be engraved. Just an added touch of distinction to an already distinctive automobile. It's the fabulous hardtop Kaiser Dragon.
Stepping out now.
Our next guest, Roy, is from your hometown, so wouldn't you like to introduce him? He's from Toledo.
Happy to, Irene. Here's my friend Edgar Kaiser, president of the Kaiser Willys. He can tell you all about the great Willys.
Well, Roy,
telling you all about the new Willys would take a little time. But first, we'd like to thank you and the Autolite family for the privilege of participating with you this evening. And now about that Willys, we'd like you, Irene, and our guests, yours, Roy, and you, to hear the most important points as we observe a very observing miss.
And so, Mr. Edgar Kaiser, president of Kaiser Willys, presents Roxanne and the Willys Custom Eagle for 1954.
And here's the beautiful automobile that car experts themselves think is the most exciting automobile of the year, the 1954 Aero Willys, the one really new car in America. You can see all four fenders from the driver's seat, and you can go around turns without that uncomfortable sway and roll. And test prove with overdrive that you can cover up to 500 miles on a single tank of gas. But the big news this year on Aero Willys is right here under the stylish sloping hood. More power, 27% more power. That means more power per pound of car than the largest selling cars in America. In modern style, economy, safety, and now with more power, you can really step right out in front in your new Aero Willys.
Edgar Kaiser back again. Do you have another member of your family, Edgar?
That Penny's back again.
Yes. Do you have another member?
The Kaiser automobile.
Just plain Kaiser.
And much more important and much more attractive Kaiser than I. And here it is.
Good.
So, Mr. Edgar Kaiser, president of Kaiser Willys, presents Miss Ann with the Kaiser Manhattan.
Kaiser. Oh, there's a big change in styling. From the new jet air scoop grille and teardrop headlights back to the huge new wraparound rear window and safety glow fender lights. They outline the fenders for greater safety at night. And there is a new change in power, too. A change to new power on demand. You see, the revolutionary new engine in the new 54 Kaiser Manhattan is really like two engines in one. For normal driving, you get Kaiser's famous money-saving economy. But when you need that burst of extra power and energy to pass a car to go zooming up a hill, it's yours on demand. So be sure that you see the new car with the big changes, the new super-powered 54 Kaiser. Oh, what power, what beauty, what a car.
Here is a great automobile story, a great automobile plant, and a great automobile struggle. That's the plant of Kaiser Frazer Incorporated. We all know, of course, the great story of the old Henry J. Kaiser, the shipbuilder, etc., what he did. He's built a $600 million empire, and he has sales of various commodities that run into $500 million a year. Back in 1945, he decided to go into the automobile business. Things looked pretty good. And he found that he was in a terrific fight because the automobile, or at least a terrific problem on his hands, because the automobile industry is notoriously one of the toughest to crack in the country. But they're still in there and still cracking. And this plant you see behind me here is the great Willow Run plant where these cars are made. But the most interesting thing about it is they're also making planes out there for our Air Force at the moment. In other words, they're making guns and butter simultaneously with the planes and the automobiles coming down the assembly line practically together. But let's get inside that plant and take a look at the making of the Kaiser Frazer cars. There's the executive office sign showing us where we are out at Willow Run. And at key points throughout the vast acreage of the plant, and it is vast acreage, the creation of the car begins. Here's the assembly of the body of the automobile. Prior to this, the floor pans and roofs and hoods have been stamped out. Now they're being fed to the line. Now the doors are added. The doors were originally made by another branch of Kaiser, the Kaiser Metal Products Company near Philadelphia. The doors join the line here as the car begins to take shape. Other lines carrying component parts, chassis, engine, trim, and so forth keep pace converging at various points. Here the roof is joined to the body, and now you see the windshield put into place. And right here you're going to see the most dramatic phase. Turning out of a car, that's the body drop, so-called, the lowering of the body into place. At this point, this body, which has traveled along a separate line, is joined for the first time with the chassis. By now, the chassis contains the four wheels, the engine, the steering column, and other basic equipment. Here's the front of the car coming down. It, too, has been traveling its own private line until it joins the main line here. Kaiser Frazer is the only auto plant, where bodies are stamped, shaped, assembled, upholstered, painted, and trimmed under one roof. A total of 84 presses, ranging up to 1,500 tons capacity, that stamp the body, roof, and floor panels that feed the body fabricating lines. And so, from this 4 million square foot factory have rolled more than 700,000 of the cars turned out by this company since 1946. Now, the president of this operation is a distinguished gentleman indeed. He's one of the sons of old Henry J. Edgar F. Kaiser. You know, in all the history of business, and as a matter of fact, the history of the arts, almost nowhere has a great son turned out a great father. This happens to be one exception, and I'm saying this at the risk of embarrassing the gentleman. Edgar Kaiser is 43 years old. Alumnus of the University of California, class of 1929. He was turned out an engineer and worked first on the great dams and other projects of the Kaiser enterprises. But when his daddy got into this tough automobile business, he moved him in as general manager of Kaiser Frazer in 1936. He became president in 1949, and now let's go over and meet him. May I present, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Edgar F. Kaiser, president of Kaiser Frazer Incorporated.
Thank you, Bill.
How did Kaiser Frazer get started? Whose idea was it, and why did your daddy decide to go into that business?
Well, you know, Bill, there's one thing I want to say first. You said that a great son turned out a great father. If my father's listening tonight, he's going to love that, because he says he's the young man in the business and we're the old men.
Well, he's a grand gentleman, and I have met him, and I met your sainted mother, too, and I'm glad to see that he survived this accident out in Tahoe Lake, the job they tried to do on him in recent days.
Well, in answer to your question, Bill, at the end of the war, we had an organization of some 300,000 people. And in that organization, a lot of young men had taken supervisory responsibilities. And my father felt two things. He felt first that a workload should be created for those people, those supervisory people and all the people that could, who had made such a contribution. And he's always had a burning desire to make a contribution in the field of transportation.
Well, now you've had tremendous problems.
We've had problems.
You've had problems of procuring material, right?
That's right.
You've had problems of trying to crash the market with volume sales.
That's right.
Why is... Explain a little of that particular difficulty.
When we started Kaiser Frazer, it was just after the war, and everyone felt at that time that critical materials would be running out of our ears. Lots of steel, lots of aluminum, all those things. Within 6 months, the whole picture had changed. You know that Kaiser Frazer, in order to get the car population on the road that it has today, in the period of our history, which is almost 7 years, has spent almost $36 million in premium steel. By that, I don't mean black or gray market. I mean shipping it from one place to the other to get the product and acquiring plants to produce pig iron and forms of sheet so that we could get that product on the road.
Well, now, I understand you're making progress. Is that right?
We're making progress. A lot of people say, some critics of ours, that we're going broke, Bill. KF isn't going broke. Just make no mistake about that.
I understand you and your tough old daddy have got your backs up on this thing. It's a matter of pride, and you're going to make it go. Is that right?
That's right.
By the way, what is that ornament in your lapel? It looks like a penny.
Well, Bill, I know there's going to be a lot of Kaiser Frazer dealers that are glad you asked that question.
Really?
That's emblematic of the Henry J. Lowest price.
And you see that? Get your hand out of the way.
Full-size, quality car that operates for less than penny a mile.
Gee, that's quite a commercial.
If I don't wear that, or anybody else in the organization, we're fined a $1 bill.
Is that so? Is this, what's that? Is that a Henry J?
That's a model of the 1952 Henry J.
Well, it looks like a good car, and I know your product is good because I am familiar with it. I'd like, Edgar, if I don't sound too personal, to ask you a personal question. You're the heir apparent to this tremendous empire, which, as I said a moment ago, amounts to $600 million, and I don't know how many different industries. I think most of the people think that the great family fortunes of this country were made back in the 18th and 19th centuries, and outside of the Ford family, haven't been made since and can't be made. But here's one that has been made, and you're going to step into all this tremendous responsibility. How in the world do you feel? Are you afraid of it?
No, I'm not afraid of it, but Bill, there's not just one Edgar Kaiser, heir apparent. First, I've got a brother, Henry Jr.
Well, I know that.
But more importantly, there's about 200 young men that have been with my father and under his direct personal training for almost 20 years. We're a team. He refers to all of us, Henry, my brother, and me, and them, as his boys, his sons. And he always tells us one thing. He says, boys, I can't leave you physical things, but if I teach you how to work, I've left you everything.
That's a perfectly wonderful and inspirational.
Well, you know him, Bill.
And I think a very helpful statement that we all can well afford to take to heart. What kind of shape is he in?
Excellent. Needliness every day.
This great team really stands ready to move in. It's trained and it's loyal, I assume.
Very loyal.
And it's all...
it takes...
I understand this loyalty is very characteristic of Kaiser Help. I understand that your secretary is so loyal that she even left her honeymoon to move in to help you out in some very tough business situation. Is that right?
That is correct. We were on a field campaign, and we told her to stay on the honeymoon, but Mrs. Hornby said no, and she joined us in the middle of the trip.
Well, that certainly is loyalty. I also understand that you put a lot of sweat and perspiration along with the inspiration. They tell me that some little dealer had a problem of some sort in his operation, and he almost fainted when a man walked in the door and said, "I'm Edgar Kaiser. I understand you got a problem here. What is it? Is that true?"
Well, my wife will tell you, Bill. I fly 900 hours a year. That's over a month a year.
Well, I think that's a pretty good picture of how the Kaiser elder and younger operate. And it's been a great pleasure to have you. And I wish you great success with all the Henry J's and all the Kaisers and all the Frazers.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Dumont.
The story of Kaiser Frazer at Willow Run. Production expertly planned. Kaiser Frazer planned. Producing Kaiser and Frazer cars as fast as quality production permits. In making cars, if the supply of parts breaks down, production stops. To keep their production lines moving, Kaiser Frazer not only buy from many suppliers, but manufacture many parts themselves. They control vast sources of essential raw materials. They control steel plants and rolling mills. A complete engine plant. They make their own bodies at Willow Run. Kaiser Frazer make many of their own parts, and so help ensure the supply of materials from beginning to end of their production line. And that's part of the story of what's being done at Willow Run in Michigan, the basic production story that explains why Kaiser Frazer dealers can and are delivering now. Yes, go to your Kaiser Frazer dealer. You can choose the car you like best. The Kaiser, the Frazer. And remember, your Kaiser Frazer dealer is delivering now.
Cars are cruelly beating, a constant, steady pounding, a real test of performance. That's why Swenson picks Henry J. Swenson and his men would rather drive a Henry J than any other car. Here's why. Henry J. knee action front suspension allows each front wheel to step over road bumps independently without transferring shock or movement to the other wheel. And the unusually generous length of spring steel in Henry J. springs gives you, the passenger, maximum driving comfort on the roughest roads. Airplane-type shock absorbers mounted inside the coil springs absorb bumps cleanly and prevent annoying bouncing action. Go to your local Kaiser Frazer dealer and find out why Ott Swenson and so many others look to Kaiser-built cars for longer years of smoother riding. Drive a Henry J. today.
Your local Kaiser Frazer dealer. The man who brings you America's outstanding cars, the beautiful Kaiser, and the thrifty new Henry J. presents The Adventures of Ellery Queen.
Good evening, everyone. This is Rex Marshall, welcoming you on behalf of the nearly 3,000 Kaiser Frazer dealers from coast to coast. You know, friends, it is a fact that the Henry J. is America's #1 buy. It's #1 for economy, and I'm here to tell you that it's #1 for ruggedness, too. Now, as an example of that ruggedness, I'd like you to take a look at these two pieces of body steel right here. You'll notice that they're both the same heavy gauge of steel. Well, sir, this piece here is from the Henry J. Now, just take a look at this one over here. Same heavy gauge of steel, and yet it comes from the body of a car costing $1,000 more. So you see, that illustrates how the Henry J. is built to the same rugged standards as the most expensive cars. And that's why you'll enjoy years and years of dependable, trouble-free driving. Why, that Henry J. is designed and engineered to stand up under the roughest punishment. Even this concrete pretzel bender can't twist the body or throw it out of line. The Henry J.'s doors fit smoothly. Not a bolt out of line, not a joint out of kilter. Yes, sir, it's been proven on the testing ground, proven on the road. The Henry J. is America's #1 buy. And incidentally, I want to point out to you that with just an average trade-in, you can own the Henry J. for as little as $34 a month. And what's more, you can drive it for only a penny a mile for gasoline. So don't wait, will you? Pay a visit to your Kaiser Frazer dealer tomorrow and drive the amazing Henry J. for yourself. Hi, Rex Marshall again. You know, I think I'd kind of rather be alone than spend any time with that Anita. Nice young lady to avoid. But right now, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of young ladies I know you'd like to meet. Doesn't that make a pretty picture, though? Only trouble is, there's something missing from that picture. Say, I know what it is. It's me. Excuse me, Jones. I invited these two beautiful young ladies down here this evening to help me show you something special about the beautiful Kaiser. Namely, its roominess. Now, this is what they call the lounge comfort seat. Nice, isn't it? You see, there's plenty of room to spare because the seat is over 5 feet wide, and it extends across the entire interior width of the car. Now, what's more, this rear seat is curved, so that 3 big people like myself enjoy more hip room, more shoulder room. Yes, the big, beautiful Kaiser is designed to give you a more comfortable, relaxing ride hour after hour. Yes, it lets you take even long trips without feeling cramped up and worn out. So you see, the Kaiser gives you extra roominess all around. And you know that extra roominess means extra value for your car dollar. Say, speaking of extra value, I want to remind you that even though the prices of 14 other makes of automobiles have already been raised, so far Kaiser Frazer has not yet raised its prices. So don't wait, will you? Visit your Kaiser Frazer dealer tomorrow for sure. Boy, that was quite a wind-up, wasn't it? You know, friends, when you buy a car, naturally you want one that's been proven in actual use. So I know that you'll be interested in learning that over 600,000 Kaiser Frazer-built cars are in use on the road today. And what's more, they've made the equivalent of more than 7 million trips across the United States. So that's pretty good proof, isn't it? Well, you be sure and pay a visit to your Kaiser Frazer dealer tomorrow, and then I know you'll agree with me when I say you can count on Kaiser Frazer for value. Good night.
Now the safety of your own home is yours on the road in the beautiful new 52 Kaiser Manhattan. Yes, Kaiser's anatomic engineering gives you the greatest safety advance in 30 years. The world's safest front seat with 7 great new safety features. First, Kaiser engineers give you a cushion-padded instrument panel with all instruments recessed. Emergency brake is at your right hand for easier reach. Corner posts are slimmed down and slanted back. The world's largest one-piece windshield designed to pop out in emergency. Greater leg room and posture control seats to brace and cradle your weight safely. Yes, it's here today. The world's safest front seat to give you a new peace of mind, a new kind of driving, and a new world of beauty in the world's most advanced new car, the new 52 Kaiser Manhattan. Drive it today. What's the nation's new favorite? What's the car all America loves to drive? What's America's #1 buy? It's the thrilling new 52 Henry J. Corsair.
Let's go, Bob. Today's my day to break 80. I see we're taking the Henry J.
You bet. I'm going to leave the gas heater in the garage. Besides, the Henry J's more fun to drive. And to tell the truth, this ride circles around the other car.
Yes, owners say their new Henry J rides better than cars costing twice the price. Even on the roughest roads, the new Henry J zips along, thanks to new velvet road springing that soaks up the bounce and gives you a wonderfully smooth and steady ride. Yet it costs less to buy, less to drive, less to maintain. No wonder the Henry J is America's new favorite. Yes, this is the car that belongs in your garage today. The new 52 Henry J.
Stop taking chances on the road.
Start driving America's first safety-first car, the new 53 Kaiser Manhattan. Only Kaiser gives you the world's safest front seat, the great new safety advance commended by Parents Magazine. Kaiser gives you the world's largest windshield, safety-mounted and designed to push outward under severe impact. But that's only the beginning of Kaiser's safety engineering, because the new Kaiser protects you with new safety-first brakes that stop you faster. Plus Kaiser's new safety-first visibility, safety-first ride, safety-first chassis, safety-first performance, safety-first steering, and safety-first lighting. So stop taking chances. Start driving America's first safety-first car. Easiest Street. You're living on Easiest Street when you own the new 53 Henry J. Corsair, the car that's easiest to own, easiest to run. The Henry J is 39 ways finer for 53. Here's what one smart lady says about her new Henry J.
It's certainly the easiest car to handle, even in the heaviest downtown traffic. My Henry J steers so easily, and it turns around in the shortest circle of any car. That's why it parks so easily in spaces that other cars can't manage. My Henry J's a dream, all right. It's the easiest car to handle. What's more, it's easiest on my pocketbook. Costs only 1 penny a mile for gasoline.
No wonder folks everywhere are moving to Easiest Street. It's time you move to Easiest Street, too. Is on the road. Start driving America's first safety-first car, the new 53 Kaiser Manhattan. Only Kaiser gives you the world's safest front seat with stronger, slimmer corner posts that eliminate blind spots, plus a new safety-first frame and chassis. See the new Kaiser.
Hey, Marty, what's the rush?
Oh, hiya, Harlow. I can't stop now. I'm coming from a preview of the new 54 Kaiser, and I've got to get over to the paper and write the story.
Hey, they call it the new car with the big change, don't they?
Right. There's a big change in styling, front, back, and inside. And there's more room and comfort than ever before. Man, the new Kaiser is luxurious.
How about the new Kaiser's power?
Oh, there's a big change there, too, with new superpower. The Kaiser has a revolutionary new engine that gives you power on demand. It's like having two engines in one. For normal driving, you get Kaiser's famous economy. But when you need an extra burst of power and pickup for passing, or for zooming up hills, you get it. On demand.
Oh, that sounds exciting, Marty. And tonight we are privileged to salute Kaiser as an outstanding member of our Autolite family. Autolite is proud of its long association with Kaiser and Kaiser dealers everywhere.
This is a 1949 Frazer owned by Art Sabin. And Art, this is an absolutely beautiful car.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a convertible, and from 1949, it had to be really a real whiz on the street.
Well, it was built. There were only some 65 of them built. And it was the first four-door convertible between the pre-war period and 1961, when Lincoln brought out its four-door convertible. The car was literally hand-built. That is, they would pull a car off the line after it had been pretty well finished and cut the top off of it and reinforce the car and then build the interior and build the mechanism to make it into a convertible. They also added, and most people don't realize that it was around at that time, but they had windows that were operated with the same pump as the top, so that they were hydraulically operated windows. Let me show you. The window is going down. The window goes up, and that noise was the pump. It's the same pump that operates the top. It is the rarest of the Kaiser Frazer cars, and considered by virtue of its lines and its general appointments and accoutrements the most valuable of the Kaiser Frazer cars. They built, after all, almost 1 million cars, and this is considered the most desirable.
What would this car sell for back in 1949?
$3,200, which was about well, within a matter of $500 of what a Cadillac would cost, a Cadillac convertible. And allegedly, there is no absolutes to this, but allegedly they lost $5,000 on every one that they built, even after selling it for $3,230.
Why is that? Why would they?
Because it cost them so much to build it. For example, the frame is reinforced with a Packard-type frame. That is, the manufacturer of frames for four-door convertibles, the best manufacturer, made them for Packards, the old 1930s Packards. Kaiser Frazer needed that reinforced frame. The Packard people would only sell 1,000 of them. Now, it's an interesting story. What happened if they built 65 of these and 43 Kaisers and, well, less than 100, and then less than 200 convertibles between 1949 and 1951. They only built the 49s, 50s, and 51s. What happened to the rest of the frames? Who knows? But they paid $600 a piece for 1,000 frames. So they just lost money. It was a method of getting people into the showroom. They figured they'd build a few of these cars, send them out to the dealers, and they'd bring them into the showroom. Because in 1949, Kaiser Frazer, only one style of car, and that was the four-door style. So they started building variations. You may have seen a Traveler, which is a four-door with the hatchback, America's first hatchback. And they built the convertible, and then they built America's first hardtop, the Virginian. So they were really trying to vary the theme. Use the basic four-door car and create variants. This was the most elegant of their variants.
So this was the attraction for people to come into the showroom to see the cars.
The price was, for that time, extremely high, and people looked at a Frazer and said, well, you know, for that kind of money, I can get a Cadillac. What do I need a Frazer? But it had certain luxuries. The appointments, there was nothing finer. This is all top-grade leather, the finest leather. It was all hand-sewn, hand-laid up on this on these seats. The carpeting is thick plush carpeting. Everything was done by hand and with exquisite taste.
And the radio is a beautiful push-button radio, I see.
Yes, and the appointments were all there. The windows, the radio, everything was standard. The hubcaps, the large hubcaps. You pick up one of those hubcaps, and it weighs about 4 times the weight of the hubcap of, for example, a standard car today.
When did you acquire this car?
About 2.5 years ago. It was owned by the club historian, who had owned it for 20-some years, and he had restored the car, but it wasn't up to the standard that I wanted it. And I finally, after literally 4 years of cajoling, arm twisting, and baiting him with dollars, got the car away from him down in Georgia. And I flew down there, and that's the adventure, that's the excitement. I flew down there, and the van, a padded, heated van, met me down there, and we drove the car into the van. I dropped the money on him and flew back, and the car 2 days later, 2.5 days later, was back in Chicago. From there, we literally took the car apart. As a matter of fact, I have pictures of it apart to the extent that I was fearful we'd never get it back together again. There were parts, the thing was just taken apart. And by the way, the hydraulic lines in this car that run all over the thing make it look, when we had it all apart, the seats out, everything out, looks like a destroyer at least, you know, with all these lines running around. But we then began to put it back together again. When I say we, I mean the people that I retained to restore the car under my direction. And eventually, this is the product, and it took a long time. It took 3 months to paint the car. 3 months to paint the car.
Is this the original color of the car?
Oh, yes. If it wasn't, if everything is not original, I lose points. There's nothing on this car that is not correct factory specifications. That's the only way that you can obtain a car that the club and that aficionados of old cars would recognize as authentic. It's got to be authentic.
Now
Everything is
you're talking about the Kaiser Frazer Owners Club, right?
Yes, that are most knowledgeable.
Yeah, right.
That are most knowledgeable.
And you talk about losing points or getting points. It's for the quality of the restoration.
Exactly.
Now, you must have won some awards with this car.
Yes, I have. I last National Convention, I won a first-place award for the class of car, and it's a prize winner. You know, I don't have any question about that, but I have to, there's something more involved in winning trophies, and that is for someone who is really knowledgeable to step up to the car, look it over with care and say, you know, it's correct. Now, when they say it's correct, then you've won something bigger than a trophy. Then you've restored the car to the way it looked when it got out of the showroom. And by the way, underneath the car is as clean as you're looking at the car on top. The engine's been detailed so that it's absolutely clean. The bottom side is just like it ran off a Willow Run, the trunk. That's the standard by which one judges a really well-restored car.
Do you take this car out on the road very often?
This is the only time I have taken it out for any distance other than running around the block.
You drove to Janesville from Chicago
That's
in the
right.
car?
That's right. And it drove magnificently. It's very quiet. It's very heavy. It weighs 4,000 pounds. And it just drove beautifully. Of course, you have to be careful because people tear at you to see the car, to get closer to it, and it scares you because people come, you know, I don't drive it more than 50 or 55 tops, although it can do more than that. And people dive in and out. Generally, people of my age will recognize the car, or at least get an idea that's a Kaiser Frazer. Most people think it's a Packard. Younger people never heard of Kaiser Frazer. So it's fun. It's a great deal of fun.
Well, I think you're having a good time with it, too.
Oh, we're going to have a great time. We're going to the National in July. Now there, which is in Frederick, Maryland, there I'll put it on a trailer, and I'll trailer it. I would not drive it that far, but the 75 or 80 miles to bring it down here, yes.
You know, I was just going to say, you're taking the car and you don't want to drive it in July because, well, it's a long distance, and first thing that went through my mind was that, well, and there's no air conditioning in here, but here I'm sitting in a convertible, and so you got natural air conditioning.
And there's another thing, too. First of all, you've got these vent windows, which
Side windows, yeah.
which went out, and you know, you turn these vent windows like that, you open up the vent there, as I've got those there, and you're comfortable. I had a 48 Frazer Manhattan that we drove in the middle of the summer to Wichita, Kansas, 108 degrees. And my wife and I enjoyed the ride. It was not overly hot at all. It was very pleasant. And by the way, we passed a number of cars that were overheating on the way to Wichita, but not ours, not our Kaiser Frazer.
Shout, get a horse, right?
Exactly.
Or get a Kaiser Frazer.
Get a Kaiser Frazer. Their motto was built to beat the best on the road. And they did make a good car. They made a lot of mistakes in business planning. They should have gone with a V8. They didn't. They stayed with the 6. They emphasized safety when nobody cared about safety. They emphasized economy when nobody cared about economy. They zigged when they should have zagged. And the bottom line is they went out of business, out of the automobile business. But meanwhile, you've got a group here of 35 cars representing various years of the Kaiser Frazer manufacture. At the National Convention, we'll have 125, 140 cars. It's a lot of fun. People who appreciate these old cars, who appreciate the Kaiser Frazer cars, they're excellent running cars. Many of these cars are driven 100, 150,000 miles without any serious problems.
And how many miles on this car?
That's hard to say because so much restoration has been done. For example, the speedometer and odometer was replaced. It shows 1,300 miles. Realistically speaking, I would guess from my examination of all the components that the car has probably about 30,000 miles on it.
Not too bad.
No, no. I have a 51 Kaiser Deluxe, which is a beautiful car. You've seen one out here, a black one, with 13,000 original miles on it. It's a new car.
Nice to spend some time with you talking about a love of yours.
Very pleasant, Chuck, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Art.
Thank you.
One of the most unusual cars at this Kaiser Frazer meet is this one that's owned by John Holler. John, what is this? This is a Kaiser...
Traveler.
A Traveler. From what year?
1951.
And why is this so unusual?
Well, it has the silhouette of a four-door sedan, but the rear end opens up like a station wagon.
A station wagon. Was this Kaiser's answer to a station wagon?
Well, I guess you could say that.
How does this open now?
Okay, the lower lid comes down. And the upper lid goes up.
Oh, a little like a hatchback, hmm?
Yeah, right. They came out with this. They came out with this in '49, actually. This particular design.
Here, I might get you out of the camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this is the 51 version. So the '49 really was, I guess you could say, America's first hatchback.
Did they make many of these?
Oh, I don't know the actual figures, but not too many compared to their total production.
It's a very interesting car, and I'm glad that you brought it along with today at the Kaiser Frazer meet.
Well, thank you.
This is a 1954 Kaiser Darren, and we're talking to Ernie and Shirley Ballrood, who are the owners of this car. And Ernie, this is a fantastic sports car for that period of time. Where did you acquire this thing?
This car come from Curtis, Ohio about 5 years ago. We bought it off a gentleman down there. We're second owners of the car, and we've drove it, in excess of 5,000 miles since we've had it.
This is rather unique for the Kaiser Frazer line, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's an all fiberglass body. It has sliding doors on it. It was comparable. We like to think it's better than the Corvette when it first came out. But it's similar to that. It's a sports car.
And the name, Darren?
Darren comes from Dutch Darren, who was the designer of the car, worked very close with Kaiser Frazer products from 47 through 1955.
It was way ahead of its time with this car, wasn't it?
Yes.
Has a 161 cubic inch engine, 3-speed and overdrive, like again, all fiberglass body.
The most unique thing about the car, of course, is the door.
Yes,
the doors, right? Let's see how these work.
Sliding glass doors.
They slide right into the fender. Look at that. Now,
never a chance for door nicks.
No door nicks. That's right. No supermarket shopping cart running into this thing, huh?
Come back.
Come back. Bang.
And latch.
Now, there's a top for this.
The top folds up, it goes back in this compartment right here. It does have side curtains that go in this area right here after you get the top up. They could not put windows in it because of the door sliding into the fender here. So it's strictly side curtains. It's a fair weather car. If you get caught in the rain...
you get wet, right?
You get wet. You better hope it's warm.
Okay, well, this is really a beautiful car, and we'll let you... Thank you very much for letting us take a look at it.
Well,
The Lloyd Bridges Show, brought to you by Kaiser Aluminum, Willys Motors, Kaiser Engineers, members of the worldwide family of Kaiser Industries. Here, magnified, is quilted brand Kaiser cooking foil at an angle. Next to it, at the same angle, ordinary foil. See how quilted Kaiser foil holds drops of water, while ordinary foil lets water slide away. Now, this illustrates a difference when you cook meats in quilted foil. Ordinary foil can let moisture slide away, but moisture clings more to Kaiser quilted foil. Helps keep meat from drying out. Prove it to yourself. Get quilted Kaiser cooking foil. The cooking foil because it's the only quilted brand of foil. Yet it costs no more than ordinary aluminum wrap. Now at your grocer's in the delightful new, lovely to look at package.
Jeep is on a whole line of vehicles. The Jeep Universal. The Jeep Utility Wagon. Jeep Pickup. Jeep FC 170. And there are many more. The Jeep line is the biggest line of four-wheel drive vehicles in the world. The word Jeep on a vehicle means it's versatile. Powerful. Virtually indestructible.
Now, an important benefit for all women who cook, bake, and roast. A superior kind of strong, pure aluminum foil. The only foil that's quilted for better baking and roasting. It's Kaiser cooking foil in the new decorator package. When you bake with Kaiser cooking foil, even sticky caramel rolls, quilts raise the food, help to prevent sticking. See? No stick and no messy pan to clean. When you roast with Kaiser cooking foil, quilts keep the meat from drying out, trap moisture, hold in the vitamin-rich juices. Result? Tastier, more tender meat. So for better roasting and baking, use Kaiser cooking foil. The cooking foil, because it's the only one that's quilted. Now at your grocer's. Costs no more than ordinary wrap. in the new lovely to look at package.
The Lloyd Bridges Show was brought to you by Willys Motors, Kaiser Aluminum, Permanente Cement, members of the worldwide family of Kaiser Industries.
I'm Bud Wilkinson, asking parents to insist on a physical activity program for all boys and girls in school. Our children need it.